Hello, hello, everybody. It's me, Jacqueline Swilly, and I'm hopping on today to talk to you about equal pay day, some of the myths versus the facts, and then one way that we can work together to solve this problem, which is by negotiating when you have an offer. So you never want to leave any money on the table. So let's hop into it. I'm Jacqueline Swilly. I am a national negotiation strategist as well as an equal pay advocate. I am the founder of Zero Gap Consultants. We are a training and development company based in Dallas, Texas, and we focus on enhancing the leadership skills of women so that they can thrive and be more effective as they continue in their leadership roles. I'm also the author of Navigating the Career Jungle, a guide for young professionals. And on my personal mission is to eliminate the gender wage gap. It's something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I think it is a complex problem. Well, I know it is a complex problem, but together we can solve the wage gap. So the gender wage gap is caused by many different factors. It's not a singular cause to this. And because of that, it makes the problem to solve it that much more complex because there are so many different factors that contribute to it. So today we are pretty much marking Black Women's Equal Pay Day, August 7th. And the reason why it's August 7th, that signifies the day in which Black women in America have to work to earn what their white, non Hispanic counterparts earned in the previous year. So, what white men pretty much earned in 2017, Black women are working to August 7th to earn the same amount. And so that's why this day is significant. Back in April, you may have seen a big hoopla about equal pay day then, and that marks the 79 cents on a dollar, which is what white women earn as compared to their white non-Hispanic male counterparts. So one of the first myths about the gender wage gap is that all women get paid the same. So let's bust that one out the notion right there. It is not the same. So Asian women, Asian American women face a pay gap. Theirs is about 90 cents on a dollar. We have white women earning about 79 cents on a dollar, Black women about 63 cents on a dollar. Hispanic women are earning 54 cents on a dollar. And then non-Pacific Island Native American women earn, I think, 56 cents on a dollar. And so it's a pervasive problem, okay? And it travels throughout all industries. So let's get into another myth that women earn less because they choose low wage jobs. And it's just simply not true. So you see women who are even doctors and lawyers who are in high skilled, high earning positions earn less than their male counterparts. And one of the areas that I thought was even fascinating when you look at housekeepers versus janitors, which do very similar work. Janitor is normally a term used for men, and housekeeper is normally a term used for women. They do almost the same type of work. Um, Women still get paid less. So this problem expands beyond. Another myth is that women don't seek the education. And so because they don't have the education or they don't invest in training, that causes it. And again, simply not true. You know, women are one of the most educated demographics in the US workforce today. Another myth that often comes up is that solving the wage gap is going to take money away from men. And that is not what it's about either. It's about paying all workers equal for the equal work that they do. So I also read a study recently that said a controlled survey, controlled meaning they had very specific measurements when they were looking at survey data, said that the wage gap was around 90 cents on the dollar. And the issue I took with that is when you look across the board for equal work, that's like for same titles. So there are people who are in similar work roles, but they have different titles, even though the work is very similar. And so you have to be careful with that because even though you have people doing the same work with a different title, if you're looking at just titles alone, you're missing some data points there. I have my notes here, so I want to pull up a couple of more myths that we have to bust before we get into this. Part of it is that one of the things that people say as a myth is The only reason why there is a wage gap is because women don't negotiate. We're going to talk about that later. One of the things that women don't do as often as men do is negotiate, but that is not the only cause of the wage gap. And then, okay, this big myth: we cannot afford to pay women the same as men. And what research shows is that when companies have a diverse workforce, they are able to see better performance. They have less scandal, meaning less controversy, less lawsuits, and their profits thrive. So it's definitely advantageous to have a diverse workforce. One more. Okay, we talked about the calculation slightly, but another myth is that if you calculate it properly, there is no wage gap. And let me tell you, there is tons and tons of data out there, lots of research, and it does show a significant wage gap. And the last one, when the pay gap exists because women choose to leave the workforce to have kids. So y'all, it is true that women take on a lot of child care as well as elder care for their parents, for their in-laws, and they're normally the primary caretakers of children. And that is not the only cause of the wage gap. However, we have to look at the overall family system and our traditional norms to see why is the burden only falling on one person in a family household. And so that's not the only reason why there is a wage gap, and women are definitely not choosing that so that they can earn less. So let's talk about the facts. All right, so we mentioned earlier that there's a wage gap for all women. Back in the 1960s, the US President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act. And with that act, it was supposed to make it illegal to pay women different amounts than men for the similar type of work. Well, here we are 50 plus years later after the Equal Pay Act was signed, and we still have this huge wage gap. In fact, at one point, there was significant progress towards the wage gap, and then it stalled. So it stalled for a really long time. We see companies taking the lead to eradicate the wage gap in their organizations, most notably Mark Benioff, who is the CEO of Salesforce. Salesforce has invested millions of dollars to bring their employees up to equal pay. And so the first time they did it, they spent over $1 million to come to the wage gap and close that wage gap for their employers. But then they acquired other companies and they absorbed other organizations. So they went back and they did another audit, and then they brought all of those people up too. So Nike recently announced that they had done something similar with a smaller portion of their workforce. So I do think that there is movement along this way. There are companies who are saying, yes, it is, an expense for us to bring everyone up to the equal wages. But once you do that, your workforce is more engaged, and that transparency that everyone is being paid the same really alleviates the stress of people saying, am I getting paid enough? Should I leave? And it creates a lot of confusion and distraction. Ultimately, employees should be engaged in their work and not trying to figure out, am I getting paid or am I not getting paid? So let's hop into one of the solutions, okay? While I mentioned earlier is very complex, some of the wage gap is even unexplained. A portion of it, we don't know why it's like that. So for Black women, there are a couple of things that are really important for them to understand. That when you're talking about wages, you have to put facts over feelings always, all right? So unless you have facts on something, it's going to be harder for you to build a case for your equal pay. So what I would like to suggest that everyone does is before you get engaged in a conversation with your supervisor or your boss, find out what the median market rate is for the work that you do. Now you can do this a couple of ways. One way is to go online to one of the salary calculators and type in your geographic area. Type in your title, your education, your work experience. Some of those sites are going to give you an average number of what someone gets paid in your geographic area. It's really important to include the geographic area because what one person gets paid in Tampa, Florida is going to be different than someone with the same title in New York City, and even different from someone with the same title, same company in Dallas, Texas, because different markets bear different rates. So you want to do that research, but don't stop at the online calculators, because with the online calculators, they show you a portion of the picture. So go a step beyond and talk to trusted people in your network. Because we know women get paid less than their male counterparts, I do encourage everyone to reach out and to talk to some of your white male colleagues to find out if you're on target to be being paid the appropriate rate. So you can't just roll up to somebody and say, Joe, how much money do you make? That doesn't work. But what you can do is you can seek the advice. So when you go to this colleague, say, hey, I know you're very knowledgeable about this area. I trust your opinion, and I'd like to get some feedback from you. Based on my research, I'm thinking I should be earning somewhere in this range. Do you think that's right? So you throw out the number, for instance, $72,000, and then you wait for a response. So what you've done is you've done some market research primarily online, and now you're taking it a step further and you're talking to someone in your network. Okay. So now that you're talking to someone in your network, you're giving them an opportunity to share with you some feedback. So don't be afraid to take some mental notes during this process. I do recommend that you talk to people who know your industry well, because they're going to have a better idea of the pay. All right. And so talk to maybe one or two people. Match that up against what you found online, and now you have a better idea of what your market rate is and what you should be expecting to earn. All right. So that's one of the first things that you want to do leading into this conversation. As I mentioned earlier, some people think the only reason why there is a pay gap is because women don't negotiate. And that is a myth. Part of the reason why is that women don't negotiate. So I want to share something with you. Linda Babcock and Sarah Lasseter wrote a book called Women Don't Ask. And in that book, they state that women who fail to negotiate their first job offer stand to lose over $500,000 or more over the course of their career by the age of 60. And so when you think about that, that is a heck of a lot of money. All right. And that's because they didn't negotiate the first job offer. What has traditionally happened is when people get a raise or they move to another position, that is based on what they currently earn or what they previously earned in their immediate past position. And so if a woman accepts a job offer and doesn't negotiate, but her male counterpart does, and he gets $7,000 more, next year, if they get promoted and they get both a raise at the same percentage, he's going to get more of a raise because he started at a higher base. When you look at your retirement, if you're investing a percentage of your income, what's happening is because one person got a higher base, they're able to save a little bit more. Further, when you look at everything like your 401k match and compound interest, you can see how that quickly adds up over the course of a person's career. So all of those things are vitally important when you're considering your long-term career growth. But let's say you're watching this and you're saying, okay, I wish I would have known that when I started my career, but now I'm all the way into my career, well past that first opportunity to negotiate. What should I do? Well, it's never too late to start negotiating. So I want to give you the framework so that you can set yourself up for successful negotiations so that you don't leave any money on the table moving forward. Okay. That framework includes 4 main components. 1, prepare. 2, practice. 3, ask. And 4, decide. Decide if you're going to accept or walk away. So let's start at number 1, prepare. When you're preparing to negotiate for a salary, what are some of the things that you should consider? Well, one is looking at the job description in great detail. I know I can't see your hands being raised here, but if I were to ask, when I normally do this in person with an audience, I say, raise your hand if you've ever taken a job, and then once you started, you realize that the job description did not match the work that you're doing. Happens to a lot of us. So when you're in those initial stages of a job interview, try to fill in the blanks with that job description. Find out as much information as possible about the work that you're going to be doing. This will inform you if the title is appropriate for the work that you'll be doing. Oftentimes, you'll get into a role and you'll realize once you understand the role that there should be a different title assigned to that work. And that title change might be the difference in 10 to 15 grand annually, okay? But you won't know if you don't have the information. In business, whether for profit or nonprofit, information is power. The more information you know, the better informed decisions you can make. So, in your preparation phase, you want to get as much data as possible. All right. So, get as much information as you can upfront. Number two, especially important as Black women, when you're preparing for your negotiation, you have to understand that there are certain stereotypes about Black women in the workplace. And so you need to be aware of what those stereotypes are so that you can address them head on. Let me give you an example. Sometimes when Black women are passionate, they're very vocal, they express themselves with their body languages and their hand and their voices get elevated, that passion can sometimes be misinterpreted. Okay. And so when you're speaking, what research has shown that Black women should say, I'm very passionate about this, so that your passion does not get misinterpreted as anything else. All right. So, very important for you to realize that and understand what those stereotypes are so that you can address them up front, so that you can put a label on your behavior before someone else can. So, when you start talking with your hands inside of that negotiation or inside of that job interview, when you're talking about your performance review or your raise and you're doing a lot of body motions, say, I'm passionate about this. And it's okay to say it 2 or 3 times. All right. As long as it's organic and not sounding rehearsed. Another thing inside of the preparation is understanding what additional perks outside of salary are typically awarded to people at this company. So the only way you know that is by talking to people, which is why it's really important for you to be engaged and actively engaged in a professional association, because people within industries, they talk. And again, the more information you know, the better prepared you are to make informed decisions. As part of your preparation, you also want to look at what your competitor companies or organizations are paying for the same position in their organizations. All right. So do the research to uncover how much is someone getting paid at the leading competitor to this organization with this title. All right. That's all a part of your prep. You may be saying at this point, Jacqueline, that is a lot of prep. And I'm telling you, it is. You might spend 5, 6, 7 hours working on it. But I like to think of it this way. For every $10,000 of that salary that my client is negotiating, I tell them to spend 1 hour in research. So if it's a $70,000 position, they should spend at least 7 hours. And you might be thinking, oh, I can find everything I need in a 2-minute Google search. You can find the base knowledge in 2 hours, but again, the more information you have, the better informed decision you can make. And with that information, you'll know what's a good deal versus a not so good job offer, because it is very rare that the first job offer is the best job offer. And you're not going to know what the best offer is if you rush through your preparation phase. Also, in that preparation phase, you have to, and this is so important, so I might say it twice, you have to be able to articulate the value you add to the organization. So think about your skills, think about the job description, think about the company's goals that are published online. How can your skill set help elevate the company to reach those goals? The better you can articulate how your skills add value to the organization, the more important your skills will be. At the end of the day, the company is hiring because they need someone to do a certain amount of work. And you're interested in doing the work, one, because you have the skills or the experience, or you want the skills and experience, but you also want to be compensated for that. A lot of times, people think I'm just going to blanket use the same resume for everything. While they may know they should customize the resume, they don't customize the resume because it takes too much time. So in the preparation phase, once you see that a company is looking for a certain skill set, it is your job to go in and edit your resume and tell the story of how you can add value to that company. So this is even before the conversation starts. This whole preparation phase is 7 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours that you're going to do prepping is all before you have the conversation. Now, I also want to let people know in certain states in the US, it has become illegal for an employer to ask you your salary history. So just do a Google search to find out what the laws are in your state to understand if you should or if you have to disclose your previous salary history. I've already shared with you that a lot of times the wage that you get paid or the raise that you receive is based on your current or immediate past salary. So because women get paid less than men, then it's an uphill battle for them to reach that equal pay because the initial pay may have been lower for a number of reasons. Again, the wage gap is really complex. So moving forward with that, what do you want to look at and what do you want to do? Once you finish your preparation phase of gathering as much information as possible, you're looking online, you're looking at associations, talking to people within your network, you're understanding the job description. But most importantly, you're looking at how you will add value to that employer. So the better you're able to articulate the value that you can add to the employer, the stronger case you can build of why you command a top salary. So in talking about your value, look at your previous successes. What have you done in challenging times to overcome challenges and to deliver results? In addition to that, look at your current skill set and what specialties do you have? What are the things you can do that other people can't do because they don't have your degree of work history, that vast array of work history, or a certain certification in an area that makes you a specialty for that area. So really hone in on getting comfortable with that. Now, ladies, a lot of women are afraid of accepting compliments. So instead of someone saying, are you receiving a compliment and you saying, oh, thank you so much, I appreciate you recognizing that, women tend to say, no big deal, you don't have to thank me, that was easy, I could do it in my sleep. What you're doing in that instance is you're devaluing your work. And when you devalue your work, you give other people permission to devalue your work as well. So instead of saying, no big deal, you don't have to thank me, you have to get comfortable starting to say, thanks. I appreciate you recognizing this. This isn't bragging. This is simply accepting a compliment. But what you're doing is you're stopping the devaluing language on your skill set in the workplace. So practice doing this. Now that you're aware of it, you might catch yourself 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks from now, still saying, no big deal, you don't have to thank me. But over time, you're able to change your language and you're able to start saying, thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that. Okay. So let's move on to number 2 in the package, which is practice. Practice is really important because if you've never said $116,000 before, you might think you sound confident, but in reality, you sound like this. $116,000. And let me tell you, if you don't sound confident, no one is going to believe that you're worth the salary you're commanding. So practice saying it out loud. One of the tools that I recommend is pulling out your cell phone, hitting the record button, and you can do a video recording or an audio recording. I prefer a video recording because you can look at your body language as well as listen to your tone of voice. So maybe you need to tweak how you present what you're asking for or change some of the phrases that you use. Maybe your body language, you do a lot of this, or you do a lot of this, or, playing with your hair or fidgeting a lot. And what that shows is a sign of nervousness. So you want to be aware of how you talk about money and how you look when you're talking about your skills, because that comes across to the other person as either confidence or a lack of confidence. All right. So if you video record yourself, you can watch your behavior and you'll be able to critique yourself. You might need to do this 2 or 3 times. If you're really anxious about recording yourself, start with the audio. Play the audio back to see how you sound. If you sound like $116,000 with a question mark on the end, you're going to have to practice that until you sound more confident. All right. So one of your homework items for today is I want you to watch a TED Talk by Amy Cuddy, AMyCuddy, Amy Cuddy, and she talks about power posing and how your body language helps you be more confident. And it's super important as you go into negotiations that you're expressing confident body language. All right. So check that out. Again, it's Amy Cuddy, Cuddy. Her TED Talk is called Power Posing. So, along with practicing, you're practicing alone, you're saying these things out loud, but you also have to practice overcoming feedback or objections. So, how do you do this? You practice with a friend. So, find someone that you trust who's going to ask you tough questions, who's going to give you honest feedback. Do a role play with them. If it is possible, do it face to face. Even though your interview or your negotiation may be over the phone, you want to do this face to face. And the reason why you want to practice face to face is so that you can record yourself in your body language. Even with people that you're comfortable with, you're more likely to slip into your familiar behavior patterns. So that's saying and and I don't know, or maybe doing that silly hair stuff that we talked about, maybe rocking, doing something that's a little bit abnormal. So you are something that you don't want to portray when you're talking to someone and negotiating for the best package. So record yourself in that practice. So the first phase is prepare. The second phase is practice. Your third phase is going to be asking. So a lot of times people will say, well, when do I ask? All right. When is that moment? When you receive the job offer. You cannot officially negotiate, although you start preparing for the negotiation well before you have this conversation. The negotiation doesn't start until you have an offer. Okay. I've seen a lot of people eliminate themselves from an opportunity because they start talking about benefits and salary during a Q&A section of the second interview. And if you know there's going to be at least 3 stages of the interview, you definitely don't want to start negotiating prematurely because you don't have the job yet. So wait until you have the offer to negotiate. When you're asking, it is important for you to be clear on what you want and understand at what point you'll walk away. So again, the ask doesn't come until you receive the formal offer, but that transitions nicely into the fourth thing, which is decide. Decide if you're going to accept or walk away. The best time to decide what your walk away point is going to be is at the time of your preparation. And you might say, well, what? Why would I do it that soon? Because in the heat of the moment, when your emotions are high, when let's say you're frustrated with your current job and you're just ready for a new opportunity, you have to set your clear parameters of what you'll accept and what you won't accept, okay? In technical negotiation language, that's called a BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So what are your alternatives to accepting this offer, this promotion, this raise, this new job, okay? You need to be very clear on that. What all of your alternatives are. Is it to continue your job search, stay in your current position, whatever it is, you need to make a list of that, all right? Because that's important. What are your alternatives? Research by Harvard Business Review that came out in the spring of 2018 says, even if you don't have a real alternative, if you imagine that you had another offer on the table, it increases your bargaining power, okay? Because that imagined offer that you will be thinking of that's on the table, that will let you know that this isn't your only option. And so you can think a little bit more clearly. A lot of times what I've seen people do is they just got to get out of their current job. They don't like it. They're very unhappy. And so they get into a point where they're like, oh, I'm just going to take it and I'll figure it out later. Well, what happens is they end up in a cycle where 18 months from now, they're looking for a new job. They're equally as frustrated today as they were when they left that last job. And that's because they didn't have that clear expectation of what their alternatives were. Instead of waiting it out for the right offer, they just jumped on the next best thing, which was the first offer presented to them. So you want to be aware of that. Now, in the deciding if you're going to accept or walk away, typically you'll receive the verbal offer before you receive the written offer. A lot of times, the person that extends the offer to you verbally will say, will you accept it? But you should accept conditionally, not definitely. Say, based on what we've discussed, once I get the written offer and I review it, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. Want to give yourself that opportunity to negotiate, okay? So if you don't have the offer in writing, you don't have an offer. A verbal offer is verbal. It is not a written offer. It is not a real offer. Make sure you get the offer in writing and you have the opportunity to review that. It is very tempting for a person to just say, yes, I'll take it. And if you just say, yes, I'll take it, guess what happens? You're going to find yourself in a sticky position where if you need to go back and negotiate terms, it's going to be awkward. So when you're negotiating and you look at your package and there are a couple of things you want, don't negotiate issue by issue. What I mean by that is don't ask them for more salary or more money and then wait for them to say yes or no. And then you come back and you ask them for flex time. And then they say yes or no. And then you come ask them for student loan repayment or tuition reimbursement. What's going to happen is it's going to make it very awkward. They're going to, one, feel like you're unprepared in what you want. Two, they may feel like if they said yes the first or second time, now you're being greedy. Or if they said no the first or second time, now you're just trying to see what you can get. So you want to present that you're very prepared. So in that phase where if you have to present a counter offer, you would definitely want to have present what you want up front in a package. So say I've reviewed the offer letter. Here are a couple of things I'd like to discuss. So one, the salary. I'd like to see what we can do about getting to market rate. Two, I noticed throughout the process, verbally, we had talked about 2.5 weeks of vacation, but the offer letter said 7 days of vacation. And three, student loan repayment. I heard that that was something that was typically offered, but I did not see that in my offer letter. So now you can go through and you can talk issue by issue, but you set the stage of the things that were important to you and you put them on the table up front. All right. So now you can have that conversation, and whether they say yes or no on the first or second thing, it doesn't sound like you're being greedy or you're unprepared because you shared with them your concerns up front. Now, you've already reviewed this in writing. If you agree to additional things, it is important for you to get that in the offer letter or in a written format, whether it's a memo or an email. If it isn't in writing, it did not happen. So we're going to do a follow-up video to this one with a few more negotiation strategies about the counteroffer. What do you do once you receive that? But today I wanted to talk to you about Black Women's Equal Pay Day, the myths versus the facts, and a few strategies to help you prepare to negotiate so that you're not leaving any money on the table. It's very important for us to remember that negotiation isn't the only solution to equal pay. It is only one solution to a very complex problem. But you have the power when you receive an offer to advocate for yourself. Remember, it's very rare that the first offer is the best offer. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is to make sure you're asking for the best package available. And the only way that you'll know if you're getting the best package or not is by preparing, because information is power. My name is Jacqueline Twilley. You can visit my website, jacquelinetwilley.com or zerogap.co, for more tools on negotiation strategy. You can also download the Ultimate Negotiation Checklist from JacquelineSwilly.com. It's free of charge. Print it off, use it every time you have a negotiation, share it with your girlfriends, and I tell you this with a checklist. When you fly, the pilot goes through a pre-flight checklist. Even if they've been flying for 15 years and this is their sixth flight of the day, they're going to go through that checklist. It doesn't matter how many times you've negotiated. The more you use that muscle, the stronger it will become. Each time, use your checklist so that you don't miss any important steps, so that you can set yourself up to earn what you're worth. Until next time, y'all, keep emulating excellence and eliminating excuses.